All right, hello everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of It's Not What You Think podcast with myself and John, and we are here with a very special guest who I'm excited to talk with, who's kind of an expert on the Disney occult and rituals, and it's Julia from the Cosmic Peach podcast, and we're really excited to talk to Julia. Julia, can you tell everyone, where they can find you and a little bit about your background?
Yes, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I am the host of the Cosmic Peach podcast, and I cover everything from paranormal to conspiracy theories and cryptids. I am a little bit all over the place sometimes, but I want to give everyone a good mix because if you're into one of those three topics, you're probably into the other one. So I kind of take things in a different perspective than a lot of the other conspiracy theory podcasts, maybe because I'm a female or maybe just because I look at things differently. But I see everything as kind of like a spiritual war. And I try to present that in every episode that I do, that this is a spiritual war and it's been going on for the beginning of time. And what we see now is just a reflection of that. And so I'm wherever people listen to podcasts, I'm on Apple and Spotify and YouTube and wherever. And yes, that is what I do.
And I like that you said that because I think, when you start off on conspiracies, it's very surface level, but if you do conspiracy right, it always leads to spirituality because
Mm-hmm.
the deeper you go and you realize the more spiritual it really is. And
Mm-hmm.
to these elite, trust fund dorks who already have all the money and all the power, um, you know that they're after something else. They're after our souls too. It's not just more
Mm-hmm.
money and more power when they can print just more money whenever they want. So yeah, I agree with you. I think John is on the same page too, that it's a very, very deep spiritual war. you know these guys have invented this construct like the devil and Satan to get you to not really look at the real bad guys, who is this Moloch bald dude who they all sacrifice children to. But where do you think the Disney fits into all of that spiritual war?
So, it plays a big part in it, actually. I think it's an essential part of it. But before I actually start rattling off all this Disney stuff, and I have my notes pulled up here, so I'll just be referring back to my notes a little bit. Where are you on fake space and flat Earth? Just sound off really quick before I
Oh,
get
uh,
started.
well, like most people, I believed in the narrative for the longest time, and then you just start realizing that these dorks are lying about everything, every single thing. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I mean, I don't believe that we've ever been into space, and I think
Okay.
we're just balloons. I think they spent a lot of time shooting rockets at the firmament, which they couldn't break free. And I think the deathbed confession on Werner von Braun's tombstone, the Psalms 19:1, I think it is shall let the firmament showeth his handiwork. He's letting us know God won, and he couldn't break free. And all of these Freemason astronauts are lying about everything. And I think we're
Mm-hmm.
on some sort of plane that's not spinning. And I think honestly it's infinite. I think that's the part that we can't really comprehend, is that if you and I go for a walk and we just start walking in one direction, I don't think we'll find the end. I don't think we'll find the edge of the dome. I think we'll just keep walking.
So you're kind of more like a dimensional kind of guy. Like we're in a flat dimensional kind of like
Yeah,
matrixy type of
I
thing.
think, when they tell you, the universe is infinite, that's this dimension that we're in, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can fly around outside of it. And if aliens are real, then they come from way over there and not from up.
Yeah, or like another dimension or something, not
Yeah,
outer space, but maybe inner space.
yeah, interdimensional.
So,
Like they come through a portal, like Rick and Morty. Like
yes, yeah. I'm on the same page 100%. I'm a flat plane,
I
uh fake space, all that.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I always like to set the tone with whoever I'm doing an interview with, because I have brought that up before to kind of substantiate some of the research I've done. And they'll say, "Well, I actually don't agree because I think the Earth is round." And I'm like, "Okay, well, let me just fucking log off then, because that's the point that I'm trying to make." You know what I'm saying? So,
It is interesting how that is a really good litmus test for where people are in the narrative. And I have to tell you, I was completely sold for the longest. I mean, I wanted to be a fucking astronaut when I was a kid, and it's interesting.
mm-hmm.
My son came home from school one day and he was pretty upset because his science teacher said, hey, there's going to be an asteroid might hit the Earth next week, and he was truly perturbed. And I just laughed. I gave him a hug and I showed him level and next level. And he was like, "Oh, well." I go, "What do you, after seeing those two movies, what do you have to say about it?" And he just said, "They're lying about everything." I just gave him a
Yeah.
bit, but don't worry about what they say anymore. You know,
Mm-hmm.
his stress level has gone way down since then.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely used as a tool for fear and getting people to uh, believe that they're insignificant
Yeah.
also. So I do bring that up a lot when I'm talking about Disney, and I'll get into why here in just a second. But a lot of people get into Disney for different reasons. And the reason I got into it is because I was looking into Stanley Kubrick and the fake moon landing. And I was diving into Stanley Kubrick's movies like Eyes Wide Shut and The Shining and Clockwork Orange and Full Metal Jacket. And I noticed that um, Stanley Kubrick was friends with someone named Werner von Braun, who is one of the biggest Nazis there are out there, and he headed up NASA. That's the most black magic shit I've ever seen. And so, how is it that Hollywood film director becomes close friends with someone who's creating this whole NASA movement thing? And then I find out that actually Warner von Braun's bestie is Walt Disney.
Yes,
So,
they're like best friends.
yes. So, how do you get not one, but two Hollywood people making movies involved with someone heading up NASA? So, that's where I entered into the Disney realm, because obviously that's black magic if I ever did see it. And a lot of the cues that we see in Stanley Kubrick's movies are leading back to the idea that we've never been to space and we didn't ever go to the moon. And so a Warner von Braun being his bestie, that you'd think that'd be something he'd know about. And Disney too. And so I started looking into Disney a little bit more. Um, and it's interesting because a lot of the first cartoons that Walt Disney released were geared towards space, and like Man on the Moon and Mission to Mars and dinosaurs. And there was even a lot of this don't question the science kind of, even back in the 50s when he first started making cartoons. This is what was on his mind, and you start wondering, why is that? But I'll let you guys interject, just break in whenever if you have a comment or anything, because once I get to going,
So,
I'm
so let me ask you this: so you didn't grow up watching any Disney cartoons at all, just as all of us as kids, watching them with, with our parents putting them on the TV or taking it to the movie theater just as entertainment before your red pill moment?
Well, yeah, of course, but I actually, up until maybe 2 years ago, was on the side of there's nothing substantial linking Disney to any nefarious actions. I was on the team of, I think people are exaggerating and over dramatizing everything, and that there was nothing to it. But after I started looking into Kubrick, and then I found little motherfucking Disney right there at his side next to Werner von Braun, I'm suddenly having this aha moment where, okay, maybe all the conspiracy theories are worth looking into. And so I'm no longer in the camp of Disney's just a, canary in the coal mine kind of figure. I think he really is an asshole and really had some sinister agendas going on. And when we take a closer look at Disney, we see that before he became the infamous Walt Disney, he and his dad were actually involved in the Chicago World's Fair and the New York World's Fair while they were doing the incubator babies and selling kids off the orphan train.
So now you're talking Tartarian rabbit hole, and this is all part of the cover up to cover up the mud floods and where all these buildings came from and how free energy and levitation used to be a thing and all these superheroes that everyone used to have. And so this all ties into them trying to get us as far away from God and our powers that we have as possible. For example, solar system. It's the system to lure your soul away from God. It's heliocentric model. Like all of these words are purposely like making fun of us. Herd immunity. I mean, they're obsessed with this revelation of method through symbolism, through words, through spells, through all of these things that they have to do in order for their demons to help them. And
I actually think that looking into it, so I've done a lot of research recently on the Nephilim and their role in everything that's going on, and I don't really care what anyone's religious beliefs are. All I can do is present the information that I found and let you decide what you do with it after that. And in my opinion, I think that all of the planets, quote unquote, are just representations of the fallen angels, because you look and the angels' names were Mars and Jupiter and Neptune, and you realize these are names of angels that are part of Lucifer's posse, for lack of a better word. And then you realize that Saturn is Satan. And they're changing the names of these fallen angels and actually made planets to represent each of these fallen angels. So again, this is nothing but a spiritual war.
Right, exactly. I mean, Saturn is the Roman version of Kronos, the Greek version of Atat, which is the Sumerian version of the Phoenician version, which is Baal, the Babylonians named him Moloch, and this is that dork that these guys do their Bohemian Grove ritual with the big owl thing that they, and this is the demon that has to have child sacrifice. And so this is where they why they have to hit Haiti with these earthquakes, and they go in, they scrape up all the orphans, and they take them places and they do these rituals on them. And I don't know if you've ever listened to some of these there's two famous Illuminati interviews of these women. One's name is Kate Griggs, and her husband was named George Griggs, and he was a Navy SEAL Marine assassin, and he was a liaison for the Lebanese king. And she just goes on and on about, man, it's a spiritual war. He'd come home telling me about assassinating people, crying, and they eventually killed him and went after her. And then there was another girl named Savali, and
I have seen that one.
Okay, Savali, yeah, I mean that one. I mean, talks about how she's at the ritual and they hit the kid with the scepter right in the middle of his head. Everyone's shocked and they're like, "Oh, it's all part of it. You're okay." And it's just, people think you're crazy if you talk about this, but all of the evidence leads back to this. And this is how you know that they don't even believe in the science stuff that they tell you, because they don't
Oh
believe.
no. Oh
They
no.
And you find all these
Yeah.
sixes in science, like 76 embedded in our science literature, and I mean the list goes on and on. I mean,
Mhm.
so yeah, we're 100%, pretty much screaming at each other in agreement. This whole this whole pod.
Yeah.
Are you guys
Yeah.
looking forward to the rocket that Elon Musk is launching today?
Oh, is he launching another rocket?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, right into the ocean.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's what I think all of them. And you notice how even the Apollo whatever, when they take off, they always go kind of like at an angle where you're like, where the fuck are they going?
Yeah,
It's just, wouldn't they go straight the fuck up? Like,
right.
I'm
But
so
their excuse that
confused.
they tell people is that they're doing that to save fuel, to catch the
Yeah.
rotation of the Earth and create inertia, and they think they've got it all figured out. But I mean, common sense will win over. I mean, in the end, people, if they try to debunk flat Earth, which I hate that word, the word flat Earth is a psyop, just like conspiracy itself, to get people not to look into it. But if they actually look into it to try to debunk it, they will become a flat earther. Like,
Right. I've recently started just saying true earth because I don't like to say I'm a flat earther, but I'm a true earther, and I think
yeah,
that truth is this, we're on a spiritual plane.
yeah. I like the
So,
realm. And I
mhm.
think that in the Game of Thrones, there have a lot of method of revelation of method there, because every single episode they utter the word realm like 20 times, like they're drilling it into your head. And so, I think that's kind of,
That's not the only one though. If you look, actually, it's Game of Thrones, it's Lord of the Rings, it's The Witcher. It's a lot of these shows are actually winking and nodding in the same direction, to where there used to be giants that walked among us, and there used to be these gods among men who walked among us, and who regular people like you and I would have worshipped, because they did have changeling capabilities like their father, who was, if they're angels, right? And Lucifer is supposed to be the most beautiful angel. He was often portrayed as a serpent, so we know that they have these changeling capabilities, which is where you get the whole reptilians thing. I don't think they're actually reptilians. I think that they can present themselves in any way that they want to. They can look like a regular person, or they can have other forms. But I think that when you're getting into like flat earth and everything like that, there is no such thing as aliens. It's all going on right here, right now, in
Right.
this
yeah,
one realm, if you will. And
right.
these movies like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones and The Witcher, they're telling the same story, how it used to be like a clan of giants and a clan of these type of people and a clan of red haired and the blue eyes and the these and that, and then they all started kind of commingling and having babies together. And then what do you see in every single culture across the world is the flood story. We got out of hand, we started fucking animals, we started making fucking chimera beings, and then God had to literally fill up the fishbowl, kill out most of them, and then restart everything. And that's not just in the Bible. Like I said, any ancient culture you look at, you will find the flood story, and you will also find the mention of
Yes.
giants.
There's over 20 stories that are exactly the same, and in every culture they have like the birth of Jesus. They have that
Mm-hmm.
with Krishna. They have they have it in the Ottoman Empire. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. It's like the world keeps repeating itself.
Mm-hmm. Or they just, based on their language, have different names for the same thing.
Yeah, that's absolutely, what I think is, each part of the world has their version, and names for stuff until people started, talking to one another. And then these elite parasites, hijacked every religion and made it, part of their psyop, and now use those religions to walk amongst us, when really they all worship something different that nobody thinks is even real, because they've made it that way. They get
Mm-hmm.
about the devil, they get you thinking about Satan, they get you thinking about the apocalypse as the end of the world, when if you look what apocalypsis means in Greek, it means to reveal. And
Mm-hmm.
they've hijacked every word, and even saying football, baseball, volleyball, they believe I'm invoking a spell to help them with this ball character. It's
Mm.
single, word that
Well, yeah, I actually did an episode at the beginning of this year in January where I talked about every other culture around the world does something super fun for New Year's that's really unique to their culture, except for us. We have a ball. And I said, is it BALL or is it BAAL? It's the
BAAL,
ball worship again,
every BAAL. That's what I'm starting
Mm-hmm.
once you start, because I've really been studying the English language, and man, once you start doing that, you're so far down the rabbit hole, you start really watching what you say.
Yeah, you'll find that it's very purposeful. And actually, kind of getting back to Walt Disney himself a little bit, I find that everything he was involved in was purposeful. It wasn't like he started drawing cartoons in his garage one day and a lot of people liked him, and then over time he became Walt Disney. He was involved in secret societies since he was around age 17. So he got involved with the Red Cross in 1918 when he was 17. And the Red Cross is linked to the Knights Templar and also tons of money laundering and you name it. But then uh, like 2 years later, after he got done with the Red Cross, he later joins the De Molay, which is essentially the Mickey Mouse Club for the Knights Templar. It's grooming you for one of these bigger secret societies. And the De Molay is connected with the Knights Templar and the Masons, among other secret societies. And what's weird is the De Molay had just come into being in 1919 and he joined in 1920. So Walt Disney was one of the first inductees ever into the De Molay. And I kind of wrote in my notes here, what are the odds of this young man, not even 20 years old yet, being involved in two secret societies linked to the Masons and the Templars before the age of 20, and then goes on to become arguably the most famous person on earth, regardless of your language. You've all watched a Disney movie
Yeah.
before or enjoyed some type of Disney thing. And then you find out that he's besties with the person who started NASA, essentially. He's one of them, Werner von Braun. And he and his dad were working at the Chicago and New York's World Fair. So tell me how there's not some kind of a design to that.
Well, to me, you just made such a synchronicity with the work, because I'm so far down the Tartarian rabbit hole, and now there's a connection with Disney and hide that narrative. And wow, so to me, God has a purpose for all of us, and He's giving us downloads to this type of information every day, because this is the Great Awakening, and I think I'm truly hopeful that many people will wake up to what's going on in time before all this 2030, agenda that they have, this transhumanist agenda.
I
John,
don't think actually that there is going to be the luxury of time. Whereas like you and I and John may have had plenty of time to digest this kind of information and grow with it and slowly deeper
Deep.
and deeper into the hole, right? So I think the luxury of time is over. I think we're racing to the finish line here, and those who are not awake right now, who may even stumble upon this episode or a similar episode on my podcast or tinfoil hat or whatever, they are not going to have the luxury of time to sit and consume it and decide whether or not they think it's real. They'll probably blow it off, and it will probably be too late after that. So I implore anyone who checks out an episode like this or even on my podcast to come into it open-minded, without a confirmation bias set that this is all fucking fake and crazy and lunacy. Just go into it as if anything is possible, and it's a little bit easier to digest in that way. Which is funny, I'm saying that while I'm sitting here talking about a fantasy land like Disney World and Disney. That's openly accepted, the fantastical creatures and the dragons and the princesses, and that's all hunky-dory. Everybody wants to be a Disney princess, but they can't believe in like the devils and the demons and the dark stuff. Everyone's literally living in a fantasy where they're going to be fucking Cinderella one day or something. And I'm kind of just over it at this point.
I mean, that's such an important message that you just gave everyone out there. And we'll make sure that, we clip that little part, to, make sure push that message, because that's so important. And I know that I frustrate a lot of people with, maybe constantly bombarding people with information sometimes, but I just hope that people can digest the information and realize what's really going on. And giants in Disney movies, there's been a lot of things coming out about giants on TikTok, on YouTube. You see a lot of these mountains that people are starting to realize have a for sure shape and form to them. And how much is Disney still trying to tell us, even with Walt Disney being dead, like Tafiti and Moana, the giant that comes out and is the island, that one really stuck with me. A couple of these pictures I've seen, it looks just like Tafiti from Moana. Like, exactly.
Yeah, and I think the mound builder sites are actually just fallen angel technology. You will still find people conducting black magic rituals at these mound builder sites, like Serpent Mound. There's a lot of mounds in Louisiana, in West Virginia. I think actually the house that's owned by the Rothschilds on some Jekyll Island or something, where they came up with the Federal Reserve, is built on a mound. So yes, they are absolutely significant to these people, and if they weren't, they wouldn't bother going out of their way to deify them. So I think that people need to pay attention to the mounds. I'm glad you brought that up, actually. And there are a lot of giants in Disney movies, but it interests me that after Disney died, it started becoming a little bit more acceptable to have like a black Disney princess or a this or a that, and now we have like all the cultures represented, which I have no problem with that. That's fine. But if you look at who Disney was, this is what people say. They say that he was a wizard, an occultist, a magician, a Satanist, a racist, and a misogynist. And the list goes on, but that's essentially what they say about him, and the proof is in the pudding. Yeah. Look at the movies before he died and the movies after he died. I mean, the magic is still continuing, like the ritualistic nature is still continuing, but there's such a difference between Disney alive and Disney's family carrying it on for him. When you start to see they've thrown caution to the wind, I'm ready for them to start having tranny princesses and like you name it. Like it's going to be very blatant and obvious now.
And isn't there a connection with this whole tranny movement with the belief that Ishtar has been released onto the earth, which is the wife of Baal, / Moloch, who is the goddess of transsexuality. And
well, I'll tell you, I mean, that could be it, and I hate to interrupt, but it's like on the tip of my tongue. I think all of these gods and goddesses are fallen angels. So, in my opinion, they don't have a sex, which is why I think they want everyone to be ambiguous, because they don't want you to be the perfect creation that God put in your DNA. Like when God made human beings, he made specific genders for specific reasons, and we have the God code in our DNA. It's divine. It's such a blessing to be part of that and to have that God gene inside of you where you can connect with him and talk to him and receive messages. But they want everyone to destroy that and become ambiguous and become neither male or female or both, or into kids. They got maps now and all this, and it's to destroy that connection you have to God. You're going outside of nature, which is an occult thing. This is an occult thing.
And so would Disney have the foresight to see this trans, fallen angel, androgynous movement coming, or would he have not supported that, maybe just being an old school Malachian,
Yeah, I think he was more old school, actually. And that was kind of like what I was trying to say earlier with the before he died and the after he died, because before he died, he was still all white princesses. He was still, the princess marries the prince, and then they have kids later on, and whatever. But the thing is like, if your mom and your grandma and your great grandma were all Christian, even if they died, if you were brought up in that, it'll always be in your mind, and you may continue to go to church yourself, or you may continue to be a Christian yourself and then raise your kids in that way. So his family, I'm sure, was just as much a part of these secret societies as he was. And now things are kind of, the ante is being upped, and his family is carrying on that torch, but it just looks a little bit different. Whereas Walt Disney wasn't trying to so much include transgenderism, but he destroyed the family structure every single fucking chance that he got. Dead mom, dead dad, parents are like in another country or something, or both the parents die, or they get estranged in some way. And so that, to me, is on purpose.
It's so dark. I mean, what's the darkest symbolism in a movie that you can think of right off the top of your head? What's the first one that, for me, it's always Pinocchio, and the kids go to Pleasure Island.
Pleasure Island, yeah.
And they don't come back as boys, and the guy's face just turns all devilish when they're and it's just overwhelmingly dark there. I mean,
I think
clearly telling you what's going on with the island stuff there.
Yeah, I think that kind of harkens back to more like Epstein vibes and the pedophilic kind of vibes. I think, to me, actually, the darkest Disney movie that I've watched is The Princess and the Frog, which I get a lot of people be like, really? And I'm like, yes, because there was a Haitian voodoo hoodoo priest in the movie who had friends on the other side who were dark shadow figures who sucked souls out. And in order to get the essence of the other person, he had to do blood magic and prick their finger and take their blood and put it into a little idol thing. I mean, give me a fucking break. Like, that is straight up black magic if I ever seen it. Like Pinocchio, you could argue maybe it's a metaphor, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. No, in Princess and the Frog, they're coming right out and showing you straight up black magic rituals.
Straight up. It's never a metaphor. That's what I've learned. It's like never a metaphor. It's like they're either telling you the truth through symbolism and lying to you through the media and telling you the truth through their revelation of method. I mean, in every single Disney movie for a reason, because it's absolutely real. And
it's absolutely, it's loaded with magic and rituals and spell casting and you name it. But I've actually come to the conclusion that the movies themselves are just elaborate rituals, programmed rituals that you watch over and over. They have very what's the word for it, binaural beats. You memorize the songs, you memorize the cadence of the way that the characters speak and the language that they're using. And so the movies themselves are showing you spells, but they're actually just a huge spell themselves. And going back to like Disney's connection with Warner von Braun, I mean, so who created NASA? There's 5 people who have been accredited as creators of NASA. One was Crowley, and we obviously know what he was into, but then it was Warner von Braun, Jack Parsons, L. Ron Hubbard, and Walt Disney. And if you just look at it on the surface, you go, what the fuck do these people have in common? And they're typically referred to as the Babylon Bunch, not to be confused with the Brady Bunch, but they're the Babylon Bunch. And I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but drawing cartoons is not rocket science. So how do they get involved with each other, and why are they all part of this Babylon Bunch? And so if you think of the saying like birds of a feather flock together, the one thing that they have in common is that they were all accused of being dark occultists. And it's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. That's why they're all pushing NASA and space, and Kubrick was doing fake space stuff and faking the moon landing and putting all the messages in The Shining. I mean, taking a step back and looking as far as I have into it, all the dots connect. I mean, there's not one thing that's out of place. It's like boom, 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 boom. And then you get to today, it's the same shit. It just looks a little bit differently.
The pieces just keep falling into place so easily. And what I try to get people to realize is that if you were a juror on a jury and you were judging these people by the evidence, you would say overwhelmingly guilty without a doubt. You would just, without a doubt, you'd be like, oh, wow, yeah, they're lying about this. They're lying about this. This is a magic spell. Oh, this is obvious. It's a false flag. Like, I mean, it's just nonstop trying to suck our energy,
Yeah, and if any of them were called like on the stand to like defend themselves, they would all fucking perjure themselves and go to jail anyways for being lying pieces of dog shit. So, I mean, they work on this. They work on depravity and inversion and dark occult rituals. So even if you ask them straight up, are you putting subliminal messages in your movies? Do you think they're just going to be like, yes, I am? It's always hidden and it's always inverted. So they might even hint to the fact that they are, but it'll be in some like really subtle fucking like a poetic kind of way. Like, maybe I am, maybe I'm not. We'll see what the next generation of children look like. And then we get to the next generation of children and they're all lobbing their genitals off.
Oh, God. Do you have children?
I don't, because I'm not bringing kids into this world. That's just a decision that I've made and me and my husband have made together. We're chill. Like, we're really happy just kicking it, me and him. And I think it's great. Maybe we'll change our minds later, but the way that the things are looking right now, I'm cool on it. Not saying that I don't love children and I have a lot of little kids in my family, but I love them to the degree that if I ever saw something like that happening to them, it would destroy me. So I couldn't imagine, like, if they were my own kids, how I would feel.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's very understandable. Let me ask you this. There's a part, and it's kind of going back to flat earth and pushing it right in your face. And it's one of my favorite kind of parts in any of the Disney movies. It's when Alice jumps down the rabbit hole and she's falling, and then things start slowing down, and she starts seeing furniture, and then she's like, oh, I think I'll just keep falling, but will I come out on the other side where people walk upside down? And she goes right in front of a globe map, right?
Mm.
Like, will I come out on the other side where people walk upside down? Then she goes, oh, that's just silly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's like I said, they won't just say flat Earth, right? But they'll like do it in a poetic kind of way.
Yeah,
It's
I
the
mean,
same thing.
that was the most poetic thing ever. She goes, oh, where they walk upside down, telling you how stupid it is. And then she goes, oh, that's just silly. And
Yeah,
you
right?
really got to pay attention to these things. And
Mm-hmm.
so one thing that I wanted you to touch on was the Little Mermaid. Um, I was listening to one of your episodes where you were going on about the folklore of the connection to the Little Mermaid, and if you could just kind of go over that for a few minutes, I think that was very, very interesting, and I'd like to hear, more of that connection.
I've brought it up in 2 different episodes in kind of 2 different ways. I talked about it in the Nephilim episodes. And then I also talked about it in my breakdown of the Witcher series. And it's mentioned in the same way in 2 different parts of the world, but there's always these legends around like a fallen angel type of character having sex with like a dolphin or a marine type of animal, and that's where we get the Selkie Maw is what they were called. It was a part human, part fish type of being, but they weren't the only type of chimera beings. I wanted people to get that straight. That's why when you look at ancient Egyptians, when they have like a human body and like a dog head or a bird head or something like that, I do believe that these kind of beings were walking among us. Like the Sphinx has got a human
And
head and the
and
lion body, and
like Medusa and the centaurs, and then that's the thing
it's the
go.
same shit, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And so they would talk about how they could live in the water, but if they wanted to, they would actually they had this changeling like ability where they could look like a regular woman, and they would come to shore and have sex with human men and get pregnant, and then that's how they were reproducing. They reproduced with their own as well, but they were very lusting after regular human men, just like in the Little Mermaid. That's what she wants, to be a part of our world, and she doesn't want to be a fish anymore. She wants to go to shore, and she wants Prince Eric, and she makes a black magic deal with the devil to trade her beautiful singing voice that's would be like a god-given gift that you could sing, and she's giving this beautiful gift to this witch, and in return she gives her the ability to go fuck some dude pretty much. And think about that for a kids movie.
They're so dark, man. They're if you take a step back, from the songs and some of the jokes, and you start really looking at what they're telling you, man, they are all so dark. They are all,
Dude,
like you said, there's
the
none of it's a coincidence. That's all done purposeful.
Oh, 100%. And the thing is like there was a slow down scene that I just saw recently on a TikTok where they're on the boat and the witch has a changeling ability, and she's the brunette. And she's going to marry Eric because she's put him under a spell. And they slow it down and they zoom in on the priest, and he's got like a massive raging boner.
Yeah, it's like this.
Mm-hmm.
And then apparently they cut it out of like later versions of
It's
it.
like, why is this appropriate for a kids movie? And the thing about it too is I looked into it even further, and Walt Disney is tied to the CIA and the FBI, and they pretty much knew that he'd do whatever that they needed him to do. So he was on their team. And so in the 1950s, when he opened Disneyland, It's on record that Walt Disney gave the FBI a free pass to use the park for whatever they wanted to use it for, which was documented as for private or recreational purposes. And think about what that probably implies. And let's see here. This is right during the middle of Project Paperclip 2, by the way. And then we find out he's besties with Warner von Braun, and he's got the FBI and CIA using his park for recreational and what does it say? Recreational and private use. So, I mean, come on. And it was in the 60s when he came out with Epcot, which was like this science learning thing.
Yeah.
And this is where that City of Tomorrow came from. And it's based actually on Nazi ideals.
Yeah.
Epcot is based on Nazi ideals.
What about the firmament? When the Disney symbol goes up, the firmament kind of goes.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
They're showing you right there. You know, any other glaring symbolism that's like right in your face that people miss every day that leads back to anything that you could, I mean, just start rifling off things, you know, is anything that you could think of that comes to mind that, you know.
Yeah. So I have a few things that I'll lay on the line for you, but I want to start with one more fact about Disney. And it's a long story on how, but Disney was actually tax exempt and is still tax exempt like a church. So think of what that means as far as like a spiritual occultism and like black magic rituals. A lot of people, when they hear government program or something like that, they think that it's not related to religion, but it absolutely 100% is. That's why Disney was tax exempt. This is all a fucking purposeful plan. But just to name off some things in the movies real quick. Let's see what I have in my notes here. Okay, so Disney movies are kind of always showing you that the fun happens when the parents aren't around. And the magic happens when mom and dad are dead or not home or some bullshit like that, or they get lost at sea. That's when the fun happens. And for an example, I wrote down Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, Cinderella, Snow White. They either had no parents or dead parents, or even like Frozen, parents died, right? Tarzan, parents die. Bambi, mom dies. And actually watching that as a kid, even if it's not happening to you, can give you PTSD like it happened to you. So it is part of the trauma. To watch a beloved character die in a tragic way like that will give you PTSD, like your own mom died or something, or some shit like that. So
I was distraught over Bambi. I was
too.
Over Bambi as a kid.
I was actually a senior in high school when Princess and the Frog came out, and I was still like super into it, even as like a 17-year-old. And when the fucking Firefly dies, I cried. I thought I was going to lose my mind. I loved that little Firefly so much. And it's like, again, why is it necessary to put in a kid's movie the idea of your whole world being destroyed? Like, as a kid, your mom or your dad or your parents together are your whole world. And what do you do after they've died in a shipwreck or whatever it happens? Your mom gets shot by a hunter in the woods. Can you imagine being like 5 and 6 years old and being like, my mom's gonna die one day? And you have to live through that. And I've also done a lot of research on SRA, but go ahead.
Sorry. And then in school, to reinforce that, you're at home watching the Disney movie, and then you go to school and they're reinforcing this. You're just dust in the wind, dude, and you're going to die, and, you know, there's nothing after, and, you know, you're going to get hit by an asteroid any second, which is always interesting how the asteroid craters are always at a 50-degree angle. You know what I mean? never hit on an angle where if we were spinning, they would hit on a slant. But no, every single crater is almost equal in its radius and depth. That's really interesting, about it. So yeah, they get you believing this whole thing, which is all about fear and, making you feel insignificant and that you're going to
or
lose.
abandoned in some
Yeah.
way. Like
Yeah.
even if it's not like the mother character, like you feel abandonment because your mother died, it's almost like the god figure in these stories is dead too, and or has abandoned you. Like in Jungle Book, Mowgli is kind of like the story of Moses or something. Like he's sent down in a basket down the river, and he's adopted by a wolf pack, but they don't want him anymore either, and they want to send him off again to the man village, and the man village don't freaking want him. And so who gets him? The vultures. We're your friends. We're your friends. So again, it's like this analogy of like everyone's abandoned you, nobody wants you, all you have are the vultures, and they're your friends. But I've done a lot of research into Star Trek and a lot of other movies, um, especially Alice in Wonderland and some of the more fantastical Disney movies. They are used in SRA. They're 100% used in SRA. So is The Wizard of Oz. And I mean, for those who don't know, SRA is satanic ritual abuse. They have children watch specific movies while abuse is being conducted to them, and it creates an alternate identity or personality within the child, and it's what's called a program to multiple, where one personality within the child does not remember the abuse and the other one does. So essentially the dominant personality, who is Julia, for example, goes down the rabbit hole, and then another personality steps forward that can handle the abuse. And a lot of the times while kids are watching The Wizard of Oz or Alice in Wonderland or Peter Pan or some of these more fantastical movies, they're so fixated on it that when the abuser comes into the room, they're focusing on the movie, and then the abuse begins to happen and they fall down the rabbit hole, and then that other personality comes forth, a lot like what Paul Benassi talks about with the Franklin cover-up. He says the exact same thing. These are Manchurian candidates. This is how they create them. This is how they program them. And it just goes along with the same, like, these are black magic rituals. They put things in these movies for a reason, and they use them for certain reasons.
And this is also ties into the MK Ultra, the whole MK Ultra thing, where they're creating these Manchurian candidates as assassins and, school shooters.
Or even like government figures have all been through SRA. I actually have 2 episodes that I would point anyone to go listen to who wants more information on this. I did an episode specifically on The Wizard of Oz, and I did an episode specifically on I'm forgetting it now, but it was something about SRA. Oh, JonBenet Ramsey was an SRA victim. This is what happened to her, except they actually ended up torturing her to death on accident and then having to cover it up. But John and Patsy Ramsey were part of the dark occult, and they were friends with all these elites in Colorado. And there's so many things that lead me to believe that actually JonBenet Ramsey was a victim of SRA and died as a result of the trauma. She was actually raped to death, and then they had to cover it up in some way. So that's why they can never find the killer, because the killers are the parents. But a lot of times when these rituals are being conducted, they will have someone dress up as Jesus Christ and stand in the room and mock the child while they're being repeatedly raped. And this is to program again in the child's mind that you are alone, no one's coming to save you, you're abandoned, and this is the end for you. And then you wonder why there's Satanists and lunatics running free in the world. We are watching through movies and other social media and any TV shows, Netflix and the like, we are actually subscribing and paying for streaming services ran by these Satanists. And you have to be careful what you're consuming. I always tell people that, like, I get it, live your life, but just be aware that you are consuming a product and it's a very purposefully placed product. But anyways,
Absolutely.
your thoughts.
I try to spend so much of my time, either just learning new information or training martial arts or just spending time with my wife and my kids. Like, I try to pretty much spend no time consuming any of this type of, entertainment anymore, because I feel like it serves me no purpose. I'd much rather spend time talking to someone like you who's absolutely blowing my mind.
Thanks. That's what I mean. I try to, I try to keep my opinions kind of out of it. Like, I could say, like, I wish that they would all die horrible deaths and like burn in hell, but that's not helping people understand about what's going on. So even when you listen to my podcast, I try to bring you the most factual information that I can and let you decide what you're going to do with it afterwards, because it's like that saying about leading a horse to water or whatever. If I can pack you full of information, of facts, and go look at this, go research this, here's links, here's books, go read this, maybe it will click for you that I am just presenting information, no matter how horrifying it is. It's real.
People act like they're like, oh, you're conspiracies. Like, I made them up. Like, I'm just making stuff up.
Yeah, I know.
Like, no, man, this is why I try to tell people that, the only difference between conspiracy and fact is about 6 months, give it
right.
And, all of a sudden, now they're sacrificing Fauci to documentaries. You know what I mean? Where before they're like, oh, trust the science. Now they're like, oh, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I hurt so many people, so it always happens like this. And, man,
I did want to say one last thing though before we like wrap up or whatever on that point about like Fauci and like the turkey basters or whatever. I do work at a doctor's office and I have a lot of nurses that work there, and they were telling me how there's this weird thing going on with dogs, and vet clinics and doggy daycares are all shutting down because dogs are coming down with this weird thing they've never seen before. It's not like kennel cough, but it's not the flu. It's kind of like a pneumonia type virus is what she said. And they're trying to shut down dog parks and all this stuff because dogs are just dropping dead, and they all have like this mucus in their lungs and they're all like coughing and spitting stuff up. And I actually think that the dogs are getting the shedded off stuff from humans, their human owners, and they're spreading it amongst each other at the dog parks and vets and places like this, and they're dying because they don't have an immune response to fight off whatever in these turkey basters.
So you mean vaccine shedding?
Yes.
Oh, God.
Just killing dogs now.
I mean, you heard what the embalmers are pulling out of people.
I'm sure if you cut some of these dogs open, you'd find the same thing.
I mean, they're pulling out almost plastic pieces that won't let the embalming fluid go through the veins, and
so think about that.
Cut people open, and then they're finding these fibers. And every single video I post about it, it just gets blocked. I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't get through. So. There's, like you said, there's no time, there's no more time, it's like people can choose not to believe in and try to ignore it. But, if our kids want to grow up to be kids like any of us thought we had a childhood, even though we were being lied to the whole time as kids, we still kind of in our mind have this idea of what childhood was like, and we love it. Right. We love our childhood for the most part, when we were innocent. And that's all we want for our kids, too, is to be able to grow up in a world where, you're not made to stay inside. You're not made to wear a mask, and
Yeah, I think there was a lot more separation between our generation and like AI demons and technology. I think we're like the last of the Mohicans in that kind of sense, where we remember what it's like to play with a stick. So, yeah, like we're the
Dennis Cook.
last ones.
Dennis Cook, the last of the Mohicans. I love it. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
What a refreshing
We really are.
John, what about you, man? What do you have any questions for the young lady?
Yeah, I do. So John Lee has some kids. What Disney movie would be safe for them to watch
Oh God. I don't
without
think
hidden
it
messages?
I think if
No.
they wanted to enjoy like a Disney movie that oh, I just see the symbolism and everything, to be honest with you. But it's just, I guess if I
What
had
about
to pick
Moana?
one,
I always like Moana.
no, that one's really bad. Really
Oh,
bad. Gods of old. Look at that guy. He's all like, you have to praise him, and that's what gives him the power and stuff like that's like he's Baal.
Yeah.
oh,
God.
God. God. He is.
He's
He is.
Baal.
He is.
Like maybe right off the top of my head, I know I mentioned it earlier, but I think maybe Jungle Book's not too bad if they're trying to kind of incorporate the story of Moses in there, and like he was sent down the river in the basket. And I mean, there's, you know what you really should do is start playing like Prince of Egypt and Joseph King of Dreams. I used to love those freaking cartoon movies when I was little, and they are Pixar, I think. Do you remember Prince of Egypt?
Yeah,
Did you watch that?
Those, yeah.
Nothing weird about that. Play that for them. They will learn a lot and they will enjoy the fuck out of that.
Great.
And the soundtrack goes hard. The soundtrack goes hard for the Prince of Egypt.
There was something else I wanted to ask you, and I can't really remember it. Oh, that's right. It's what about I heard somebody say when they were talking about Demolay, about how one of their beliefs is, oh, maybe I'm getting it wrong, but it's when technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Oh, we're there. I mean, we're not like heading towards the precipice like we were there like 6 years ago.
Yeah.
I think actually no, it's been longer than that. I think when we got iPhones, we reached it. Magic is now indistinguishable from technology. When we got motherfucking iPhones, maybe even with like iPod touches, like with the little click wheel, and then like you got an actual iPod touch where you could like FaceTime people on it if you were like on Wi-Fi. I think that was like the baby steps to get us to like always having your iPhone or like always having some type of technology on your person. Because for me, like, I wasn't allowed to take my iPod to school. I was not allowed to take my iPod to school. But then I got an iPhone, and suddenly that was okay to take to school. In case I got kidnapped or something, I could call my mom and be like, hey, by the way, I'm getting kidnapped. But think about that. Now it's always on your person.
Right.
That's
and,
when we...
And kids are getting them instead of when I got an iPhone when I was in my 20s. Now kids at 8, 9, 8, 10 have them.
Mm-hmm. Younger than that, because if you think about like an iPad, freaking toddlers have freaking iPads. They set it up for them and they put freaking Cocoa Melon or whatever the shit, and they're having technology pushed in their face from infancy. So that's why it's indistinguishable from magic. Like, oh, my baby's crying, let me pull out this freaking thing and they'll shut right up. That's pretty magical.
Let me see if I can blow your mind real fast with a little bit of information. You may already know this because you mentioned Aleister Crowley, and you're very educated in all of this occult stuff. But have you looked into 9/11 as a mass ritual?
I have very briefly, but I didn't spend too much time on it. Hit me with it.
Well, if you look into the numbers of the planes, they all correlate to these Aleister Crowley magical spells. Three is the Thelemites' greeting, so Flight 93. The sun's 93 million miles away. And then when you get to the Pentagon, which is a pentagram built on the 77th longitude, and it's built 77 feet high, and it was hit by what flight? 77. And what was the call sign of the mobile command center? That was when we get attacked by anybody, when we get attacked, the mobile Pentagon, the mobile command center, which is like Air Force One, is supposed to be on the other side of the country immediately away from any attacks. But no, when the Pentagon was hit, it was directly overhead for some weird reason. Do you know what the call sign of that plane was? Venus 77.
Told you. I fucking knew something like that was going to come up. But they have to include one of their fallen angel god kings.
How many victims? How many victims do they tell us? Minus the hijackers, who we don't even know are real or not. They tell us there was 2977 victims. Then George Bush read My Pet Goat for how long? 7 minutes. And all those kids in the classroom were going, planes, hit, steal, planes, hit, steal. They're doing a chant, and he's reading the book upside down with the goat upside down. And so what this guy, S.K. Bain, shows you is that all of these numbers correlate to these Aleister Crowley, beliefs that he implemented into these ruling elites. And what they believe is they let some dark entities into this realm, and you could say that they were successful because the Patriot Act and everything that's come after that has kind of been leading towards this 2030 agenda. And that their plans are 200-year plans. They start plans 200 years ago, knowing that their grandchildren are the ones that will see it come to fruition, because what they believe is that soon as they die, they're going to come back in this realm in their same family and still be ruling, this realm, while they hate us because we can manifest and eventually ascend to the next level and be with God, where they're stuck here with these demons.
Yeah, and I think, I think the portal was opened way.
Did I lose you there at all, or are you still with me?
Oh no, yeah, I'm totally with you, but I actually think that the portal was probably opened a lot further back than that, probably with the Tower of Babel. Because like if you translate Babel into like its original language, it meant portal. So they weren't like building a tower to heaven. They were like trying to portal into heaven, and God had to like come down and check them because they had advanced technology beyond our even comprehension. So like you'd think that if they knew how to open portals in Babylon, that they were probably trying to summon like the Whore of Babylon. They've probably been trying to do this since literally the beginning of time, like when Adam and Eve got kicked out. I mean, that's some real shit right there. And I think the elites, what we would call elites, are actually bloodline descendants from these gods of old, these fallen angel god kings who were interbreeding with humans. And so like George Bush and these assholes, the Queen of England, they can trace their bloodline back to these gods of old. That's why they're able to open the portals and they practice this magic and they know how to summon things and they know how to do these rituals. It's because like 9/11 may have been like a massive ritual on like a global scale, like everyone knew about it, they were showing it all the time, but it's just like one of a billion rituals. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just a crazy, like if you sat back and like looked at certain things like throughout time, like even with the Federal Reserve and before that, like they've been doing these rituals like constantly, and at some point, like after They were not expecting like Jesus to be resurrected. Like if they knew he was going to be resurrected, they probably would have tried to stop the crucifixion. So like ever since Jesus was resurrected, they've known that the rebellion is over. So it's like good and evil is racing towards the finish line as fast as they can. And they're trying to take as many people down with them as they can. So that's why you feel all this like energy in the world right now, is because we're so close to the end and they fucking know it. So they're trying to deceive the masses as quickly as possible.
Man, we just did a whole episode on Revelations in real time with our friend Anastasio, and the episode before that, you know, I mean, wouldn't it be a great Zoom meeting if all 5 people that we've had on so far, all like, because we had a guy who talks to demons, and he says demons are cool, and you know, like they can actually help you, and that angels are the that don't understand people, and if you pray to the angel for money, he'll make you paralyzed and you'll win a big settlement. so, so it was pretty interesting, and I actually, after we were done with that episode, I had to lead John and I with a prayer. Just because,
Yeah, I don't fuck with spirits. I never have, but I do.
Yeah.
I love God and I love Jesus, and like I have my Bible sitting right next to me at all times, just in case a motherfucker want to come on the Cosmic Peach podcast on some BS like that, and I need to like slap them with scripture and thanks. Next, I don't like
but it
know.
was, but we let him talk, and I wanted to hear his perspective, and
Yeah,
while
yeah.
I may not agree, you know, with what he's saying, you know, with a lot of it.
He actually said some cool stuff too. So, you know, he definitely said a lot of stuff that we didn't agree with, but there were some pretty interesting.
And then he said something that there's something worse than demons that they don't know what it is or something. It's called something else. I go, something worse than demons. I was
The
like,
devil.
yeah, I don't know. I think the devil is just that's part of the psyop to get you to not look at the real bad guy who's Moloch and the Balk and the Atat character, and it's that.
I think that those terms are just terms to describe who he is, though. Because, like, I think, like, if you have, like, a street gang, one guy's going to be, like, the leader. And, like, that's Satan. Like, he's not greater than the other fallen angels, but he's, like, smarter than them. So he's the leader. But he's got, like, a posse of, like, henchmen who are the devils and demons that do his bidding for him. So he's, like, sitting up on his throne. He's the god of this world, right? He's not going to get his hands dirty, but he does have henchmen that go out and kind of like do what he needs to do.
I personally believe that the word Satan, you know, like they say, it means adversary, and they use it kind of vaguely, when the devil is the construct to kind of get people to think about this guy with red horns that doesn't really exist, and the main bad guy of the bad dimension, or whatever you want to call it, is this Moloch character, and he is what most people would think the devil is. So that's where my research has taken me, you know, after studying a lot of these English words. Have you heard of Jordan Maxwell?
A little bit, yeah, I think so.
He's very good at explaining the English language, and for example, you know, our energy, our loosh is like a river, you know, and it flows in a certain direction, and that's our current. And the system that they've created for us is this money system that is currency, and that's where all of our energy goes into this current and the currency, and on each side of the river is a bank, you know, and that's where our currency flows to, is the bank for them. And so they've created all these terms and words on purpose to pretty much either A, they're making fun of you all the time, B, they're letting you know what's going on secretly, you know, or C, you know, they're telling you information, you know, through, some sort of, secret code,
Or like inverted,
Yeah,
as they love
inverted,
to do.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
reverse. What's up is really down,
Mm-hmm.
above, so below.
Literally.
Literally. John, you have
Yeah.
anything else for Princess Peach?
No.
What do you think about Mario being like a kind of an analogy for life? He starts off with no skills, and then he eats the mushroom and he starts winning different games, and then he gets to the level where he pretty much do anything. And it's very interesting if you start breaking down some of, like I said, I think reality is so much more interesting than they want you to believe. And if you really pay attention, you'll see everything. You'll see
Mm-hmm.
everything. Nothing will get past you. Nothing will.
Right.
Just like in Superman 4, there's this part where they're like, it doesn't need to be true. It just needs to scare them, and they'll keep buying the paper.
Mm-hmm.
They're telling you right there in the movie that what they're selling. And that's
Yes.
1988. I'm 6 years old.
Yeah,
But
I think that
that
they
now, and you
sexualize
realize,
everything too. Like it's sexy to be scary, and it's sexy to want like the Christian Greys of the world, or like the vampire guy, or you want to be a fucking character in True Blood and let somebody like have you for a snack. They've done a bang up job getting people to cross over to the dark side and think that it's sexy and cool.
they really have, haven't they? I mean,
Yes.
with all the rap music and you know,
Mm-hmm.
people creating the culture that filled up the prisons, on purpose. That whole
Yeah.
that that whole culture went from disco and everyone dancing to now everyone's bringing a gun to the club and shooting each other right after that
Mm.
whole push of NWA. What was
Mm-hmm.
that? The rap group with Eazy-E, right, and Ice Cube. They started pushing that really hard because they knew they wanted to fill up the prisons. That's the only way that these private buyers would buy them up. And they came up with the 3 strikes rule for marijuana, where you get life in prison for fucking marijuana. And now people are growing marijuana right next to the prison while people are in prison for life for marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and people are voting for the guy that made that. People, African Americans are going and voting for Joe Biden, and he's the one that came up with that bill, that 1993 crime bill, to put people in for 3 strikes.
Yeah, I did watch an interview with Judge Joe Brown. I think he actually went on like Alex Jones or something. It was like talking all about Biden and like how Biden used to call black people like roaches, and if you let them in the school, you'll never get them out, and like all this stuff. And this is now the mascot for the blue team, and go to hell. Like he looks like the fucking crypt keeper fucker from Poltergeist 2.
It's definitely not the same guy. I got so many pictures of the old Joe Biden, and then you've got this new guy, and I show this to people, and they're like, "Huh? Well, he did. I think he got a facelift." And they start. You can just tell people
Yeah.
realizing that. To me, I don't.
And then he got his earlobes attached.
Yeah.
And then he changed the structure of his skull.
Did you guys see the video that's going viral of the back of his neck? Like he was
Yes.
wearing a mask?
Yes, where he messed with
like a skin suit. I did see that.
Yeah.
He it and the skin stuck. And yeah,
Like a skin suit. Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of information coming out about these celebrities admitting that. God, and it really makes you clinch up to say stuff like this, at first. But I mean, cloning and clones and masks and people masquerading as other people, and people's clones doing the performances for them while they sit back and just try to do whatever the Illuminati tells them to do. I mean, you start getting deep enough, everything sounds crazy only to the people you're trying to explain it to, because we know for a fact that it's 100% true because all roads lead to Rome.
Mm-hmm.
They all lead
Yeah.
to the same place,
Mm-hmm.
which is these evil parasites are hiding everything about us, and they don't want us to know how special we are and how special this world is. And
And even to like on that same point, but I think that you're right. They also don't want us to know how weak they are.
yes, yes, absolutely. Well, I think that's a good time to wrap it up. I'd love to do this again and pick your brain on a bunch of other topics. I could scream in agreement with you, for a couple hours. It's been a real eye opener, which I loved. I appreciate it so much. I think that you are doing such incredible work, and I all we can do is try to stay the course and keep waking up as many people as we can to what's really going on so that they at least know how special they really are and how much God really loves them and how much of a support system they really have amongst all of us because I'm team humanity. I'm not team demon. You know what I mean?
No.
I'm
Oh
team
no. Right.
and I'll destroy all of these trust fund dorks. I don't care how many, you know, rituals they do and sacrifices they make. If they all got in the ring with me one at a time, they would all get destroyed. And none of them would even win a round. So I believe that all their only power is inheritance. They can't manifest a thing, and in the end, I think we're gonna win.
Agreed.
So
Thank you for having me on.
God bless you so much. We love you.
Thank you. Love you too.
All right. Bye bye.